Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and I feel terrible for Randen, but we still have a job to do. And by we, I mean me and two very smart lawyers. First,
I love this intro. Thank you.
First is my co-host, a woman who definitely rocks, Jessica Lewis.
Aw, look at that. Thank you so very much. I like most of the intro.
Yeah.
You got to go with the rocks thing, but
Yeah,
I'll take it for what it's worth. All right, I rock in a good way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
yes.
right.
And welcome back to special guest Karishma Patel from Survivor Island of the Idols.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with y'all. Great intro.
It's very nice to have you back again.
We are rock star lawyers. That's what we are.
Right.
Rock
there we are.
Lawyers.
That's yeah, we can tell Ben this definitely rocks.
Yes,
yeah.
This rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Randen's exit did not rock.
No.
Did not rock.
No.
So, but yes, we knew this week was going to be so complicated to explain. So we brought in Karishma as a reinforcement.
That's right.
Or we pre-planned it, and it's still cool because we get to talk to Karishma. So,
Well, I did say to David when he was concerned, like, oh, we have a guest this week, and obviously this week there's not as much to necessarily discuss about why Randen lost, but I thought maybe this will make it more exciting if we have a guest. And I'm so Karishma, just get some pressure. Some pressure is
a little bit of pressure, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely have some opinions about the episode and this season as a whole. And we can sort of interweave that in a little bit. I mean, maybe some couple unpopular opinions, but things to think about as the season goes forward and, might change my mind. So let's see.
Okay.
I love that.
All right. Yes. Even though Randen went out due to a medevac, it is still our practice to compare his game to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since, using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. The newest version of the rules can be found on the website by going to our dedicated page at robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed and clicking on the link bubble for the Survivor rules. But before we do that, Karishma, how are you doing? And well, here's your first opportunity. What have you thought of the season so far?
Well, first, I'm doing great. Still working. I have a almost 2-year-old now who takes up almost all of my attention. I don't know if you can hear, he's screaming mama right outside my door right now. Oh, my heart melts. But I'm doing absolutely wonderful. And as far as the season is concerned, they're going to have to put in some work to get me back on this season. For me, these first 3 episodes are not serving. The cast is not giving me anything. I'm not feeling like, I'm genuinely like rooting for anybody in particular. I'm not sort of excited during the episode at the edge of my seat or excited to see what happens next. So I'm just waiting. I'm hoping, because I know Jeff and company. I know those guys. I mean, they really know what they're doing, and they've done wonders in the past. I mean, look, we had 2 episodes in a row that were duds last year at the beginning with the quitters and whatnot. But this season, it's just not doing it for me. So let's see, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I have some people I'm rooting for still, and I understand. It's sometimes in Survivor, the roll of the dice, and not the shot in the dark dice, but just the roll of the dice in terms of who goes at the beginning and who, and what kind of story there is, and if there isn't as much ability to tell the other stories because those tribes aren't really scheming and plotting much, or what they're doing isn't worth looking at. And so you have one tribe that gets most of the focus. And it's, we'll have to see. I think it will pick up. I think it'll pick up soon. But yes, it's just, there's been some bad luck in terms of who the first 3 people out have been and how it happened.
I think too, there's a combination of things happening where things have become rather predictable, and this is something that we've talked about a lot on this show, is just that they need to stop doing the same thing every season, because it really is becoming too predictable. And we talked a lot about the 3 tribes versus the 2 tribes, and how much I think more storylines can be generated the more people you have all congregating together instead of these smaller tribes. Because then what we're having because of that, and I was kind of contemplating this, because people are like, oh, is Bhanu just like the worst tribe, this, because there's always like that one tribe. But if you really start to look at it, you have 6 people, someone goes home, so then you have 5 people, and someone goes home, then you have 4 people. But those 5 people, those 4 people have to compete in everything, whereas the other tribes get to sit out people. And so people don't have to compete all the time, and so they aren't having to expend all of their energy in every single challenge and be exhausted while they're back at camp, because there's only 4 people at camp to do all of the things that camp life includes: collecting firewood, doing all of these things. If you have flint, so
I was going to say, and that's
look at that.
Yeah,
that's the other thing, Jeff with his sorry for you, it's like, okay, they haven't had flint, they haven't had fire.
Give them flint.
Just give them flint.
It's not making it any more interesting.
How is this? Yeah, how is this making it better, Jeff? That's
not.
The question. To ask the Mike White question, is it fun? And the answer is no, it is not. Yeah. So, come on, Jeff. Let's at least improve that there.
I think you end up hurting people's ability to really play the game that we all love watching when you do things like that. I understand that they want to try to keep people on their toes, and that's fine. You can certainly do that with players in a different way. You don't need to keep their flint from them. You can do other things that would affect them and other things that would keep them guessing. But let them have flint to at least have fire, to at least try to cook some type of food and do something, so they're not just laying around, being exhausted, not being able to compete, and just we're seeing more of the same every single week.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Agree.
So on another topic, instead of the show itself, I know that, Karishma, we've discussed this on a podcast before, but it's been a while. So maybe if you could tell the viewers and listeners your history with Why Blank Lost and the rules. Because it was funny when I was in Houston a little while ago, and we met up, and you reminding me of that was fun.
Yeah, so I actually studied it quite a bit before I went on Survivor, and I had one little journal to just put all my notes that I wanted to focus on, and I wrote all of the rules down on there. And for each of the rules, I had like a subsection of like ways to remind me how to follow that rule and what I've done and what I still need to do. And it was in my little notebook, and it was definitely when I was in the hotel quarantine for, I guess, a couple days in LA before you fly to Fiji. I was reading it over and over and over again, studying it, memorizing it, even at night in the tents pregame. It was my little notepad in the tent pregame. What were we calling it? Tent City back then. Reading it and just reminding myself of the things. Now, I mean, when I got out there, was I really able to follow anything? But I did continuously try to remind myself the crux of a lot of it is, try to understand other people's intentions as best as possible. And I remember that one very, very clearly, because I remember reminding myself of that multiple times in my original 10 days at Lyro, that I need to take a step back, Karishma. You're not connecting because you don't understand these people. Take a step back, listen more, talk less, and see if you can understand them. Follow the rules.
That's fantastic.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Y'all saw what happened.
Well, listen, we have said it time and time again. You go out there, that was my dog, with your plans, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to play. These are all of the things that I want to have happen. And then the game just smacks you in the face and you're like, oh, so much for my plans. And you really do have to adjust and you have to be flexible. And, but good to have that base so that way
Yeah.
you know where am I starting from and what do I need to try to get back towards? Because if you don't have that, then I think maybe we see some of the gameplay we've seen.
I wonder if Bhanu read them.
I'm
What
gonna
was
go
that?
with. I'm
I
gonna
wonder
guess
if Bhanu
no.
read them.
Go with no.
Unless it came out of Jeff's mouth, I don't think Bhanu knows much
The
about the
rules.
game. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll
And he especially wouldn't have liked it when we were having our regular segment on why Jeff was wrong, because Bhanu, I mean, that's literal sacrilege to Bhanu. You
His
know,
guru.
His
his
guru.
guru. Yes.
Do not speak ill of the
No.
probes.
No. So, so we would, normally we would start to move on to Randen here, but we always have some other things to discuss about the episode. And this week we're going to have more than usual because so much of the episode dealt with people other than Randen.
Yeah.
Indeed, a huge amount was spent specifically on Bhanu. And there were so many great quotes by and about him that I feel like we have to discuss him. And I know we could basically be doing why Bhanu lost 1 week early, but we can't let these wait. I really think we have to go into these. I mean, we were talking about, or I just mentioned how much Bhanu there was. When I sat down and went through the video that I had captured to make TikToks of, I was like, oh, one about Bhanu, one about Bhanu, one about Bhanu, one about Bhanu. Oh, one not about Bhanu, another about Bhanu, but
it was the Bhanu special.
It was. I mean, this whole week on TikTok is going to be all Bhanu all the time.
And I feel bad for Randen because it's like his episode, he was the one leaving, and there was so little focus put on him. Right. And there was so much focus put on Bhanu that it just seems unfair.
And then we're going to continue with that trend. So sorry, Randen.
I know, and I'm sorry, Randen. I'm really sorry.
So both before and during the episode, I fully expected Bhanu to follow Jess and David out of Jan Jelinski, just the Jessica and David thing. But we don't, and it was, it was still a very clear possibility. We will never know for sure, but I think that would have happened. I do not think Q was going to convince Tiffany to vote out Kenzie, because Tiffany told us Kenzie is savvy and smart and charming, but she believes that Kenzie is on Tiffany's side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Tiffany's too much. Like she's already doing all of the computations in her brain. Yeah.
So, of course, there was everything leading up to that, starting from right after the previous tribal council, with Tiffany trying to console Bhanu for them not telling him about the fake idol. But the way she consoled him was like, we didn't tell you because we didn't trust you to keep your mouth shut.
Right.
I mean, that was, and it was just like, I never want you consoling me, Tiffany, because that is...
That's everyone's excuse though, isn't it? Like, oh, we were worried you might leak it or something. But the bottom line is always, you don't tell them because they might squeal. That's always the reason.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the way she was trying to console him was being a little too honest there.
Yeah. I don't think Tiffany.
Well, that seems to be Tiffany's MO though, right? She does this
So, and then Tiffany tried to explain to Bhanu that he didn't have to be honest about everything all the time, even in tribal council. She said, you can totally lie to Jeff. It's okay. Or just keep quiet. But as we mentioned, Bhanu worships Jeff. And the idea that he would lie to Jeff, he couldn't even fathom it. His mind was blown.
Mm-hmm. Don't understand that.
But that's what tribal council is.
Yes.
Right. And that was one of the conversations I had with Jeff when I was in California, and we were and I went to the finals. When you get to meet him and you sit in a room and you're having a conversation, one of the things I said to him was, you will not get anything from me in tribal council. I said, I don't understand why these people all of a sudden feel safe and feel like this is an opportunity for them to share, and they talk about their game and they provide all of this information and everyone is listening. And he thought it was fascinating that I was like, I'm not going to give you anything. And then I annoyed production because I wouldn't tell them anything during tribal council, but I'm like, why would I?
There was a time where they stopped the camera so Jeff could yell at me.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Tribal council is just another stage for you to play the game. Stage by like what I mean, like a stage in a theater.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's what tribal council is. It's not some sort of safe haven. It's not where you spill your guts. It is another venue in which you play a game.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that you two are both attorneys. You know when to talk, when not to talk. You know how you trip up other people into talking when they should not be talking. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that both of you came in with that same mindset.
Oh, yeah.
But
you have to know when to hold them.
That's right. as the old proverb.
You got it.
Yeah.
No, I'm right.
I love that.
That was an incredible scene because it was.
They let it go. They let it go, and that was great. That was great TV. That was great TV.
And I mean, just it's interesting though. One thing that is interesting about it is a lot of commentary has been like, tribal councilors are so meaningless. Why do we spend any time on them? Nobody says the truth. They just throw out some metaphors and then they go to vote. So at least Bhanu has shaken that up.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So
it's like uncomfortable. It's not even like it's one way. It's one thing to go into tribal council and try to spin some stuff, but it's another thing to just literally like what did Tiffany say? Like, stop making the block hot. You know, it was like perfect explanation of what not to do. Like, yes, you can say things, but you are making everyone just kind of look at each other and go, wait, what is happening right now? And too much is being shared and too much is being said. Yeah, it's not great gameplay at all.
He's word vomiting, not to quote Mean Girls too much. And that's another theme I feel like is in this season, Mean Girls a little bit. But Bhanu word vomits a little too much. And that unpredictability is very, very scary for anybody to be working with. You only want to work with somebody who you can predict. Right? Who you feel confident will behave and act the way that y'all have agreed. And Bhanu, unfortunately, just his spirit does not follow that.
I mean, as Kenzie the Mermaid Dragon said, he doesn't have a strategic bone in his sweet little body. He loves the game. He loves to watch it, but it's different to play it. And then Q later said he has a passion for the game, but he doesn't understand the game. And both of them came to that same conclusion. And I'm sure Tiffany probably shares it. And so do I. We've talked about this here before. You can be a fan of Survivor without really knowing how to play Survivor. And from now on, I think we're going to be pointing back to Bhanu every time we mention that. He will be legendary like Jelinski, just not necessarily in a great way.
Allegedly. We're still working on that Jelinski thing. I still need to find out what happens when the tribes merge.
Yes. I mean, I think anybody who understands Survivor also would have had a negative reaction to being told they're the Philip to someone else's Boston Rob.
Yeah.
And then also later that they were a liability, but he took it in stride. Now, as far as the Philip thing, I will say the color of Bhanu's sweater does closely match Philip's underwear.
The thing, it's no coincidence.
Yeah. So
fascinating.
Now, when Bhanu was chosen to go on the journey, his tribe mates all knew he would spill everything, and of course he did. And then he complained to Ben and Liz. They said, I'm not strategic, I'm only emotional. Literally as he was proving them right by having an emotional meltdown while telling them everything.
Yeah.
I think Rob mentioned on a podcast that his 10-year-old was like, that's what you're doing now.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
He saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, oh,
Yeah, I feel for him. I feel for
I
him.
do too, but
I think he's broken a little bit. His spirit's broken.
yes. Well, and you could tell because he was like spinning conspiracy theories, or he was just spinning. He was
lost
spiraling.
it.
He
Yeah.
was like, but what if they're telling me this when they're really doing this, or maybe it is this, and maybe it is that. And it's like, look, I know you got to consider all the possibilities, and yes, you can get paranoid out there, but you've got to latch on to something. You can't spiral completely out of control.
Well, and I think that is a very interesting component of the game because it's not real life. And some people don't really recognize that when they go out and play. And Bhanu seems to be someone who is a genuinely kind. I mean, his shirt says be kind, right? He's actually wearing a t-shirt that says be kind.
Which, by the way, is the same message on the local school's little message board right now. I drove by and it says be kind. And I was like, I think it was up before they saw Bhanu, but I think it's also like kindness week or something like that. I don't know, but,
well, and I think that's just who he is. He's just a genuinely kind soul. And when you play Survivor, you can't always be kind. You have to be willing to be a little backstabby or lie and manipulate because that's part of the game. And if you are not comfortable doing that, and I'm not saying that you have to enjoy it, but it is part of the game. And I feel like he's just someone who is struggling so much with that aspect of it because it is not who he is, and he's not understanding that that's who you have to be in order to play Survivor. You just have to be.
Yeah. I have a theory on what's going on with Bhanu. So, as a fellow Indian, right, I'm full on, appreciative of to start casting Indian people a lot more. First and foremost, representation matters. And I think it's amazing that we're seeing that. And then with somebody like Bhanu, who's very, very spiritual, very, very religious, right? And in our religion, there's this whole concept of detaching yourself from material things. And once you do that, you can achieve like a heightened sense of enlightenment. And I have a feeling Bhanu's obsession with Survivor has less to do with the game of Survivor as we know it and love it, and more to do with the concept of living in the jungle, detached from everything else, and freeing your soul of material things, which is the divine. And I feel like that's where his whole I came here not to win $1 million, but to win 1 million hearts. I feel like he came for some kind of a freeing his soul and connection. I think he went on the game seeking an enlightened form of connection. And in that first couple days, in this first week, I don't know how long it's been, when he's not achieving that, right? He's being stripped of everything. His soul is bared, but it's not being connected to. I get the feeling that's breaking him. And that's what he seeks more than anything. I don't think the whole 1 million hearts thing means he wants to be popular on social media or wants 1 million people to love him. I genuinely feel like he has felt like he's achieved that principle of a sixth sense almost. And he isn't connecting with other humans the way that he seeks and craves so much, and that's breaking him so much, and that's what's chipping away at him, making him second guess everything he's thinking, making him feel like he doesn't, everybody's against him and behave the way he's behaving. That's the when I look at Bhanu, that's what I see is happening. And I get that all I wanted out there was to connect. I realized the hard way that the number one thing that I personally need in my life is connection. And without it, forget food, forget shelter, forget drinks, forget everything else. Without connection, I break. And I learned that's a lesson that I learned out on Survivor. And that didn't have much to do with like Hinduism or anything, but I kind of feel like that when Bhanu was in tears, just continuously saying like, I'm not out here for $1 million. I'm out here for something that I'm not getting with these people.
Yeah.
It broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what I sense is kind of happening with him.
Yeah. And also, I mean, even in his pregame interviews, he had said something like, when he grew up, everybody, he grew up poor and everybody supported one another. There was no backstabbing. There was, and that would be the hardest part. And we're seeing it play out in front of us. And so, yeah. And that, that lack of connection continued too, because and it was funny when I was watching it, and I still think it's somewhat funny because it's not about him, it's about the others. He returned from the journey, and he basically, moped his way back into camp looking for all the world like Eeyore, and he's walking in and the others are like, how was it? I'm like, read the room, people. Come on.
They weren't.
I think that was when Tiffany was like, "You should be happy. You were on a journey."
Yeah, and he's like, "Okay."
that was really funny.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Q. What do you think? And I'm like, what was the point? Just
Yeah.
It's not great gameplay at all.
And then, of course, we could fast forward to the end of the episode. And I don't know how this plays in with what you were just talking about, Karishma, in terms of religion. But throughout it all, he had been praying for a miracle in order to play. Yes.
God, I don't know.
Yes. And then Jeff told them about Randen, and Bhanu said, my prayer's been answered.
So cringe.
Which, if you believe that, it means God injured Randen on Bhanu's behalf.
No, I don't think he connected all the dots. And
I know.
He didn't connect all the dots, but we're hearing it.
Right. And some people tried to argue with me on Twitter, but no, he said his prayer was answered. And I mean, you're right. He probably was not connecting all the dots. He was not thinking that way.
Definitely not. Yeah.
But you prayed to stay in the game, that prayer, and you said that prayer was answered. But it was answered because someone else got hurt. You can't have one side without the other.
He didn't get to the butt part. Like his brain didn't get to the butt part. We all know that.
Right. But the people on Twitter, they should have known it, who are arguing with me. So, it's like, oh, yes, like you said, cringe. Like, oh, don't say that. No. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was so every medevac I've cried. I mean, I've been in tears and everyone. Bruce was medevaced on the first day. I was a mess. I was a mess because it is so gut-wrenching. And like looking at Randen's face last night, like I was definitely tearing up. Like I was definitely crying because it's like his dream, and it's being taken. And it's like you don't even know. I mean, for Bruce, like you knew it's a head injury, you're bleeding, we get it. But for Randen, he didn't even know. I mean, they're like, it could go away tomorrow, or it could be something threatening. Like we don't know. And that uncertainty, that must have been so heartbreaking for him. And it just broke my heart. And for Janu's reactions, I mean, I'm going to chalk it up. They did not get to the butt.
Yes.
Because I think any player would understand the heartbreak that comes with being medevaced. But
I was actually going to ask you about that because I saw that Jake from last season had tweeted to ask if other past players had felt like their medevacs are much harder to watch after having played, and you responded.
Yes.
So
definitely very, very difficult to watch. And I can empathize very, very, very much.
Yeah. Now I know that we just talked a lot about Bhanu, and some people from what we just said may get the idea that I or we don't like the guy, because that happens whenever we criticize anyone's game. It doesn't matter whether it's here or on TikTok or wherever. Someone is always like, why do you hate them? I'm not. It is literally our job. Okay. And so, that's not the case. He seems like an incredibly nice person.
He does. He seems like a wonderful human being.
Nice a person. He's just not a good Survivor player so
Yes.
far.
Yeah, he's not
And
cut out to play Survivor yet. We
Right.
don't know.
Right. It could be better.
He
I
could
really
have
do
a revelation.
he
that
can.
Guys,
miracle could occur.
He could have a meal, and it would be like
Right.
That might be it. That might be all he
180.
needs.
I don't think so. I would bet heavily against it, but it's possible.
It's
So,
possible.
yeah.
And listen, you never know if he makes it to the merge.
Mhm.
I think he's on a train to the end, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and that's something that they discussed on Know-It-Alls was what
Mm.
percentage chance does he have of being in the final 3?
Huh?
And they came up with some pretty high percentages because if he does make it to the merge, who's going to want to bother taking him out?
Right. He
He's
isn't going to be a threat.
Right.
The only concern I think that they would have is kind of keeping him in check. But if no one is necessarily working with him, he can't do much damage by himself because he's one person. So it might just be better to say, hey, Bhanu, come along with us. You're good to go. We'll do the scheming and plotting. You don't need to worry about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's going to have to connect with some people for that to happen.
Yes.
So we're going to have to see how people sort of manage being around his personality, which may be a lot different than what these people are used to back home. They're going to have to adapt and be flexible.
Yes. Yes. And so, I mean, and I do want to say, even if he ends up going this week, we will still have plenty more to examine in the Why Bhanu Lost podcast. So nobody fear about that. You know, if it happens next week, don't say, oh, I'm not bothering to listen because he already went over it. No, we will have plenty.
I don't think so. I don't think it's him next week. I don't think that they would have devoted so much time this week on someone who is just going to leave next week. And I'll tell you something. Production calls audibles a lot. Y'all know this. They could have had the tribal council. There's no rules in place. If somebody gets medevac, you don't have to do tribal. They could have. They canceled this tribal for a reason. And
well, I mean, they have a schedule to keep. And I think sometimes they have extra space and sometimes they don't. So like in 44, when Josh was about to get voted out, they canceled tribal council as well because it would have wrecked their schedule as to when the merge came and when everything came. So from that standpoint, you know, they have some flexibility, but especially I think now in the new era, I don't think they have as much flexibility with, you know, we have to get one person out per time, you know, to get to this point, to get to this many episodes. So I think, you know, at least there's the precedent set with the, in 44, them not going to a tribal council at that point. So
yeah,
I mean, we'll see. I don't know that they're banking on a whole lot more content from Bhanu that, you know, that we haven't seen, but who knows? Now, other people in that tribe, you know, like Q, it seemed as we watched, like it seemed like he was getting ready to throw in the towel after that challenge.
I don't understand.
And
I don't understand that.
Well, I didn't think he really would. It didn't come off looking good. For his part, he said on Twitter, part of life is owning when you screw up and being willing to take full responsibility of it. No one is quitting. Just in that moment, felt responsible, and part of it was trying to test to see if voting me out is an option for them. That lasted 5 minutes. Then it was back to work.
Okay, so it was a game. It was a game move to kind of test waters.
That's what he's saying.
I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it either.
I mean, that's what he's saying. It could be rationalization for what happened. For now, I guess I don't have any reason to disbelieve it. I will say in Australian Survivor, and I'm not going to spoil anything, well, maybe a little, there was a player who had an advantage. And with this advantage, he needed to get everyone to vote for him.
Oh,
okay. And so he put on this whole acting clinic about how he wanted to quit and everybody please just vote me out and everything else. I won't say if it worked or not because that would be spoiling it.
That's a one-time advantage because you can't do that again.
Right. And yeah, and so
Doesn't sound like much of an advantage.
well, and well, if he got that done, then his vote would be the only one that counted. That's the advantage part. So, but yes, so
That's a lot.
there are reasons for people to say that, but now in the future, whether in Australian Survivor, I doubt it'll happen in US Survivor, but like if anyone ever wants to be voted out in Australian Survivor, they're going to all just look at them and be like, no, you quit. Just quit. We're not going to vote you out.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's definite.
yeah.
Or they just have one person vote for someone else.
Right,
Just
right.
in case.
Yes. Now, switching tribes, I don't really have much to say about Siga other than the Idol segment flashback to 4 days earlier was weird.
Yeah.
I understand it
Sure.
wasn't important as to when it actually happened in the timeline, but they had 2-hour episodes. They could have done it then, which makes me think they did it now because they literally didn't have anything else for
It
Siga.
has to be.
in
They just took
this
it and
episode.
twisted it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they wanted to show something from each of the tribes, obviously, and nothing interesting happened on Siga. I don't know. I mean, that's hard to believe,
Mhm.
but I don't know.
I mean, when I first saw it, I thought that they were showing it in this episode because Siga's going to lose and they're going to have, like,
Right.
Jem's going to have this whole continued
Right. Mhm.
idol
Yeah.
adventure.
Right.
That's what I was gearing up for the second I saw that. But then it didn't happen. And I'm like shaking my head. But I agree with you. It must be that there's just nothing happening because they haven't lost yet.
Right.
No
Mhm.
lines have been drawn. There's nothing else for them to talk about or do. It's you know,
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with you entirely.
Well, yeah, and there was a secret scene of Jem trying to get Tim and Ben to talk strategy, and nobody would. Nobody would. Ben, especially. I really like Ben, but
Yeah.
he was like, "Nope, I'm not talking strategy because we haven't
I don't
lost.
have to.
So why would
I don't have to.
You know, so I'm not throwing names out there. I mean, and the tribal breakdown seems to be, you know, 2 women, 2 men, and the new Malcolm and Denise in the middle. So
Right.
until something happens, there's really nothing more to discuss.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one thing that I thought was interesting from this, and I mentioned it while live tweeting, was that Jem was the first person to note to us that there were specific follow-up instructions about what would happen if she wasn't still on that beach before losing a challenge. It was always someone had, you know, of course, freeze framed
The note.
and we had seen that was there, but they hadn't mentioned it on the show. And
Mhm.
so
That's why.
I think that the reason they had her read it is because she won't still be on that beach, which means a swap or a merge will happen first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's happening soon.
Not next week, but it's got to be the week after. I mean, if there's no action happening, you
Right.
gotta mix stuff up.
yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, they need to do something to liven
Oh,
things up a bit
Mhm.
because
For
it's
sure.
really not lively.
No.
No, these people are not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will
So-
say, during that whole Siga thing with Jem and digging in the middle of the night and everything, I had my mother and then one of my friends both reached out to me and they were like, "Isn't it really dark
Yeah,
out? How is she
yeah.
digging in the dark?" And I'm like, well, the stars are actually kind of like they light up more
Mhm.
than you would think. But yeah, props to her for being able to do all that in the dark because it
Yeah,
is
it depends on the phase of the moon.
very
right?
dark. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You would look because the phase
Right.
of the moon will determine whether. I mean, when it's a full moon, it is full light. Like you have
Yeah.
a lot of light. Yeah.
It was funny because she mentioned how dark it was when she was digging, but then
The note.
she was reading the note, and I'm like, okay, we know you're not reading the note right there. You know, you're reading
You know,
later.
Yeah, and
the camera person will give them a light to read the
Yeah.
note.
yeah.
Ah.
And I will say when they try to talk to you at night, they do have a light
Yeah.
on their
The
camera
confessions,
as
the
well.
confessionals. Yeah.
So they have that too. But they do warn you, like you need to start getting ready for bed now if you're going to do anything because once the sun goes down, it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It
they
is
are definitely on
dark,
you
like,
for
go to the
getting
bathroom
settled.
now. You have 20 minutes. Once
Yep.
it is dark, it is dark. If you try to get up and go to the bathroom, you will get hurt.
I
Yes.
remember, I think it was Carson saying, like, in his pregame interviews for 44, like saying something to the effect of, like, I'm going to run around out there in the dark and I'm going to do that. And then afterwards, he was telling us at one point, he was like, oh, it was so dark. I couldn't see a thing. I
Yeah,
don't know what I was thinking.
It was incredible when, like, the first night, I still remember them being like, when they were warning us, I'm like, it can't be that bad. And then it was that bad. And then Ken got up and went and found the water well, and we were like, he's never coming back. Like, he will be gone forever because it was so dark.
We attached like a long rope from the med box back over to our camp. So if you need to go in the middle of the night, you can follow
that's
the rope.
genius.
You can follow the rope over and follow the rope back.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, sorry guys, I haven't eaten anything all day. My husband brought me pita, so I'm gonna.
Oh, hey, all right.
Before I pass out,
You need to eat.
Yes, yes. Don't pass
No.
out from lack of food
not-
on a Survivor podcast.
I'm not gonna go Yanu
No.
on y'all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now on Nami, we saw Venus complaining that Hunter was too well liked, while he made a bed and won the immunity challenge almost single-handedly. So yeah, Venus, good luck getting rid of him.
Oh my gosh, that bed looked amazing.
Oh my gosh, I was looking at it. I was like, that basically in India is like a bed you buy at the market.
Amazing.
Yeah. He is somebody I want on my team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Want to keep that guy around for sure.
Right. Right. And I'll have some more thoughts about that later. But of course, we had the situation with Randen's medevac. Yes, we're 40 minutes in. We're talking about Randen. I think some of it will fit within the rules, as strange as that may sound. It'll make more sense when we get there. But I think we have to discuss a few things here. First, there was a lot of immediate reaction as it happened about how ridiculous it was to pull someone for a test and then find out it wasn't as bad as they feared. I agree with that. I had a whole thing prepared. But in this case, we heard from Randen in his interviews that even though it wasn't as bad as they thought, it was still pretty bad. You know, he told Rob in his interview that he couldn't have come back to the game after the scan, and he really couldn't even move his hand. So that settled that part. You know, I mean, yes, I still believe it's true that you don't want, I don't like, you know, if you have to get a test, you're out.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was more than that. And my thing is, it would have been nice if Survivor had actually given more of an indication as to how serious it really was. And I know
the clip that they did, which was
right.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Come on,
You know,
guys.
well,
Yeah.
And I know they didn't want to give it away earlier, but like he was examined after the challenge, even though he didn't participate. And he said he had a big lump on his neck and he had all this other stuff and pain and everything else. And there were opportunities when production could have shown that this was serious.
Oh,
and
for
they
sure.
Out of nowhere. It really came out of nowhere.
Yeah, like give him the time that he deserves for his final episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it was blindsiding the viewers. I mean, I know people were, you know, a couple people on Twitter had said there's only 15 minutes left. That's not enough time for a tribal council. And I was like, well, to me, that says it's an obvious Bhanu boot and they're not going to spend much time in tribal council. No, you know, it just all of a sudden goes back to Randen. And I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going now.
Did you guys get the feeling? I don't know. I got the feeling when Jeff was approaching, like Randen's face didn't change. It was as if maybe the doctors had given him a heads up already at his last examination. Like, hey, this examination's not looking really good. We're probably gonna have to pull you. I got the feeling like he had kind of accepted that already.
Yeah. And from his interviews, he basically he said it was not a surprise. Let's put it that
didn't
way,
look
surprised. Yeah.
Now
I
will tried.
Yeah. I will say when Dr. Will said he consulted a colleague who's a neurosurgeon, I thought they called in Voce. You know, but no, then he said her. So I was disappointed. I was like, that was Voce's way to get back on the show. So
keep it in the family.
That's right. So all right. So there's a lot that we talked about you know, before getting to the rules, but there was a lot in this episode that really had nothing to do with the rules. And so Is there anything else either of you two want to discuss before we move on to the rules?
I feel we should probably move on. We're
Okay.
44 minutes in.
Well, I just want to say before the podcast started, I predicted 45 minutes before we got to the rules. So,
Well, look at that.
yeah.
Yeah. Y'all didn't know I can be a little long-winded sometimes.
Now, I say that, and then I'm about to mention that, by the way, before we get to the rules, we want to just mention that they come in a shorter and much more colorful version as a poster. And you can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster and click on it and then buy it. And then it will be shipped to you. In addition, you can keep scrolling and get the poster on a t-shirt, or you can keep scrolling and get the checklist on a t-shirt, which Jessica is modeling for us today.
I love it.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah. I was reading. I was like, focusing in on your boobs too much, but I was like staring and reading it.
That's all right. You go ahead and focus. It's fine.
I like it. That's a great shirt.
So again, if you want that shirt, you can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and just click to your heart's content.
That's right.
All right, so we heard in the pregame that Randen's wife and daughter suggested he apply to Survivor, but neither of them thought very highly of his chances. He showed them because he was never voted out. But how was he doing up until the point of being pulled from the game? What were his plans going forward? Let's look at how everything was going for him, even though we know the technical reason why Randen lost. Now, the first and most important rule, other than like rule 0, which is, well, rule 0 we had talked about, don't quit. But I guess rule 0 sub A is don't get injured. And so, okay, that's fine. That's taken care of. That's not on the poster. But rule 1 says scheme and plot. And we saw a little bit of Randen doing this, and he filled in more details in his interviews. What we saw mostly involved him talking to Soda a little and then making an alliance with Venus, where he seemed to be her only support in the tribe. It turns out some of the stuff about Soda was taken out of very important context. Because when I looked back at my notes, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. That was terrible. But when Randen was talking to Soda about Venus, I was ready to say he was scheming too much because he alerted Soda to his feelings and she immediately ran to Venus. But Randen clarified him saying that to her was a test because he didn't know if he could trust her. And so when she ran back to Venus, she failed that test. And he knew he couldn't work with her going forward.
That is a very risky move to make, though, because you do run the risk of not only affecting your game with the person who is then telling the person on you for what you said, the person that has now been told might have bad feelings towards you, knowing that you're saying things about them. So it's a tricky, not necessarily great thing to attempt. If you can pull it off.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so he said, or he told Mike Bloom that he, felt that he had good reads on people, but part of those reads were that he saw he couldn't get in as tight with some as others were. For example, the Andy Griffith alliance of Tevin and Hunter. He felt that he would have voted with them if they had gone to tribal council, but not been a part of them.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking that's probably what he was talking about when we saw him looking for an idol and saying, he didn't feel like he was really in with everybody.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though, he said in interviews that he felt pretty safe. If they had lost a challenge, he expected Venus or Soda to go. And he said that in that situation, he would have tried to save Venus and get others to target Soda. And in fact, had already begun working on Tevin in that regard. But if that hadn't succeeded, he wasn't going to go down with the Venus ship. He would have joined with the numbers against her. And in the meantime, he told Dalton Ross he was as close as he could be to both the Tevin Hunter duo and to Venus to cover himself for the merge.
Yeah, he didn't feel like he was necessarily close with very many individuals on his tribe. And I think that's why we did see him like trying to connect with Venus, and so it felt like that was someone he had more of a connection with, almost because he had to,
Right.
because he didn't have that closeness. But at least he was seeing that and recognizing it and aware of it, because a lot of the times what we've discussed is that people don't necessarily see their surroundings, and they feel like they are in better with this group of people than they actually are. So the fact that he was cognizant of that, I think, speaks volumes to his read of the room and the people he's playing with, and knowing how he needs to move forward and what he needs to do, but fully aware of the situation at the same time.
Yeah, I think Randen had great social awareness, and that can be a really big downfall, is if you mistakenly believe that you're closer with a particular group than you really are, and don't sort of realize that I may be with a group and I'm at the bottom of that group. That's the classic downfall.
Yeah. Now, one thing that Randen mentioned to Gordon Holmes relates to the scene we saw of Venus insisting that Hunter was running everything. And, Randen was like, no, it's obvious that Tevin is running everything.
Yeah.
And he added that randomly bringing up people's names doesn't make sense when you don't have the votes to do anything about it. And especially while he was trying to get them to vote Soda. So, I had mentioned earlier, the idea that Venus was like, oh, I want to go after Hunter. And he's over there like, stop it. Don't bring up his name. Stop doing that.
Yeah, that disconnected them a little bit. I think that took a little bit of the Randen Venus connection away. I think he disagreed with her, and, maybe felt like, I don't know if I can be on the same page as her. And like you said, maybe was considering, letting her go at some point.
Yeah. All right. Well, the second rule says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, I thought I was going to discuss him talking to Soda about Venus, but it turns out, no, that wasn't an issue. I can't think of anything else he did that would be a problem in this rule that we saw. Can either of you?
No, I think he played a very quiet game, that he was aware of what was happening. He was involved. He wasn't pushing things to happen, but I don't think he was doing anything that was shocking, that was too much. I think he was really playing a very well-paced game.
Yeah, didn't he, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a little bit of talk about him idol hunting, getting caught idol hunting?
He caught Venus idol hunting.
He caught
yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the other way around. But
and actually, I'm not even sure I would say caught, because he said in his interviews that she was kind of obvious about it from the get-go. So
and then didn't she just say, I'm idol hunting?
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Like,
kind
okay.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, the third rule tells players to be flexible, and there's a funny story about this rule, and I'm bringing that up because normally we talk about being flexible strategically, but with Randen, I think we need to talk about being flexible physically too. And so, Jessica, why don't you tell the story, because you were the one who participated in it.
Sure. So if you're going to display that for everyone, so the top, I have to point this way.
Yes.
You got to go down. It's too high.
Oh, no, I was showing what Be Flexible did.
Oh, okay. So Be Flexible, yes, is there. And originally, see that top picture there next to Rules of Survivor with the people trying to hold up the falling down shelter in very flexible ways?
Oh, I love it.
That was the original drawing that Eric had come up with for Be Flexible. And though I loved it and thought it was beautiful, I had to explain to him that's not what we meant by Be Flexible. Or I should say what David meant by Be Flexible. So I explained to him what was meant by being flexible. And then we talked about what players would probably represent that the best. And we thought Kim would be a perfect representation for that. And so she ended up becoming the representation of rule number 3. And then that just became a funny little, depiction on the sign. But yes, or the poster, that's where that came from.
Yes. And I'm glad he kept it on
but
there,
it was great.
Yeah.
Great play on words.
So this may be the first time we're discussing the physical version, because whatever Randen did we don't know. Was it sleeping on the bamboo? Was it something that
Mm.
happened in a challenge? These are very physical challenges, you know. It was significantly worse than we saw. We mentioned that earlier. He described in interviews how he had excruciating pain, worse than a migraine. He had that big swollen area on the back of his neck. And yes, Dr. Will mentioned something on his neck briefly as they were pulling him, but we didn't hear anything about it before, you know, even though that was the main problem. So that goes back to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, I initially thought he got bit by like a poisonous spider or something.
That's what I
Like
thought. I
paralyzed
thought for
inside.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he said
I
there was like
immediately
a
pegged it.
tingly like sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He's like, I felt
Yeah.
a prick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I immediately pegged it as a pinched nerve on Twitter. I was like, "Oh, it sounds like a pinched nerve." And then the doctor came on and said, "Sounds like a pinched nerve." I was like, "Yes,
Look at
I can
you,
get my
David.
medical degree."
Dr.
David, you're
yes.
right.
Yes. But I also did not have all the information, you know, with the neck injury too. So,
and I will say with sleeping, I just have to mention, so sleeping on the bamboo, we did what was called like the rotisserie turn when you would sleep on the bamboo, because a certain part of you would be in a lot of pain because you were sleeping on the bamboo. Then you had to turn, and then another part of you would be in pain and they have to turn again. So it was like the rotisserie turn the entire night when you were sleeping on bamboo. So I'm not surprised that the bamboo has finally taken someone out of the game, because it is not comfortable at
It's
all.
very, 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 and the location of the knots on the bamboo are key. If there's a knot in just the wrong place and you're on it, that could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, not comfortable.
Yeah.
Not.
Yes. Now, from the lens that's more in line with the way we actually look at this rule and being flexible, Karishma, what did you think of Randen?
I mean, we didn't. I honestly feel like I didn't see enough of him to really gauge an opinion on his flexibility. I mean, had his tribe lost, and you know, he had to sort of figure out where his vote was going to go, what was going on, we may have seen a lot more of his ability to be flexible, ability to adapt. But unfortunately, we did not get that far. And so I don't think that his flexibility ever became into practice. I think we saw a little bit of, you know, his willingness to be open to working with Venus, despite unfortunately, her being on the outs, right? You kind of get that sense that she is who the tribe has decided if we lose, it's going to be her. Right. But he remained flexible and kept an open mind to working with her and partnering with her. And I think that is great at that stage. A lot of other players wouldn't have been as flexible, would have followed the herd and the herd mentality.
Yeah.
And you know, that brings up an interesting point that we saw last season, where and now everyone's names have left my brain. But Emily wasn't really connecting with the people on the tribe, and then she was kind of scooped up and taken under whose wing? Caleb's wing, and that had great effects on his game and her game combined. So I feel like that's kind of what we were seeing here, that he was looking at someone who was on the outs and thinking, this could benefit me. So I am going to take her under my wing. I'm going to share this advantage with her, and I'm going to now know I have a solid number with me. So I think that's a great point to bring up for sure.
Yeah. Now, I will say that Randen told Mike Mike Bloom, that once he realized he wasn't immediately clicking with people the way, for example, Hunter and Tevin clicked, that he needed to start changing his game and adapting immediately. Yeah. He said, Soda and Tevin are hyper-social players. I'm like a mid-social player. I can get there, but I have to have a catalyst. And so the first impressions of getting there, I immediately felt like I had to change up what my perceived kind of gameplay was based on what I was seeing with the hyper-social gameplay with my teammates. So he said that's what he did. Again, it's hard to judge because we didn't see it. Yeah. But you know, from what he's saying, he saw what needed to change and he moved to change it.
That's the social awareness coming in.
Right.
That's very good.
All right. Well, the fourth player tells the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. Jessica, what are your thoughts about Randen for this rule?
He was so even. I don't think he had
Even
any
keeled.
issues at all with this. Even when he was struggling and going through all of this pain, he even kept it in check and didn't shout about it, didn't scream even though he wanted to. And I think he realized that could have a negative effect on his game. And so I really think all of his responses to what he was seeing happen on his tribe, the conversations that he was a part of versus what he wasn't a part of but aware of, all really, he was, I don't know, you just had a really good mindset about him and how he was working through all of the permutations and the possibilities. So I don't think he had any issues here at all.
No, this chapter would have a footnote for me. See Bhanu.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's
well, see Bhanu for
so
what
much
not
happening.
to do. For what not to do. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Randen did well here, though, of course, there wasn't much opportunity to test it. But based on what we saw and have heard about his relationships, he saw Soda might be a problem, trapped her into revealing that. But when he did, it's not like he got mad at her and went off on her or something.
Right.
Because some people would have done that. He filed it away. He knew what he had to do going forward. And similarly, he didn't get upset at not being as tight with Tevin and Hunter. He made decisions on how to handle the situation.
Right.
And even when it came to Venus, he wanted to be an ally to her. But as we discussed a little while ago, he also knew he might have to cut her.
He has a good head on his shoulders. I could definitely tell. He had a good head on his shoulders, even keeled, ability to manage his emotions. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. In the third rule, we discussed how he felt he had to amp up his social game, and you have mentioned, Karishma, social awareness. But unfortunately, we didn't really see that in the show. So we heard about it. It's hard to say exactly what he did, but it's good that he was thinking in that way and, trying to change things up.
Yeah. I feel like on a tribe, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I feel like on a tribe, especially like his, one or two people are going to take up so much of the spotlight that it may leave very little spotlight to go around. And I think
think that Tevin could possibly be taking up the spotlight.
Right. And so I think he was just kind of comfortable in that audience of Tevin or maybe even Soda at times. And playing at the social game doesn't always mean being in the spotlight and being sort of like the class clown and everything. I don't think that he was doing anything actively to break this rule per se. He wasn't sort of the main actor at that tribe person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's very big personalities on that tribe who are definitely going to be noticed, and so it's fine to just be in the shadows a little bit. That's fine. Nothing
it leaves
wrong with
less space. It leaves less space. Like I remember for us in the original Lyra, like that was Elaine. Elaine was such a big personality, and it was amazing. It was amazing having her on our tribe because she brought so much entertainment and so many stories and so much humor and all of that. But she took up a lot of that space. There wasn't that much of that entertainer, talker, people who can crack each other up. There wasn't that much of that space left because that space was Elaine's space.
Right.
And that's not her fault or anything. That's just how the cookie crumbled. And I think that's what's going on here is I think the space is being taken up already.
Yeah. All right. Well, the sixth rule warns against being too much of a threat. From what we saw, there seemed to be several people who would fall into this category on the Nami tribe, and we were just talking about those people. But Randen was not one of them, at least from his read. He thought he would be fine. And, from what we saw, I agree. If people were going to target threats, it seems like Soda and Tevin and Hunter would have been the ones to go after, whether now or more likely even at the merge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Randen could probably have continued to shield himself with other people at least for a while, I think.
Yeah, I think he could have. There was enough, like we've already said, big personalities, big players on his tribe that if he made it to emerge, I don't think he would be the first one they would be looking at all.
Right.
There would be at least 3 other people on his tribe that they would look at before him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, the 7th rule covers idols and advantages and game mechanics. And of course, we know Randen got a beware advantage. And he also decided to tell Venus about it to cement their bond. Normally, I, of course, prefer that players tell nobody. But in this particular case, I think it worked to reassure Venus that he really was with her and, kind of lock her in, because she does seem to be the type of player who needs that reassurance. And after he told her, Venus said she planned to work with him and use the advantage with him. So it really did help kind of bond the two of them together.
Yeah. Dangerous though. Yeah. If her back's against the wall, now she has something on him. So
true.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, this leads to a topic that has been discussed quite a bit already in social media and on some podcasts. And I have to tell you, I'm feeling a lot of deja vu, because people were immediately asking, could Randen have given the advantage to Venus if he wanted to? Now, one part of this question does make sense in that it's not an idol. It's not like would be handing an idol. It's a clue that tells what will happen, because it's a beware advantage. And he already has taken the kind of the pain, or he has the pain of the beware advantage. And so it's understandable, because that does raise all sorts of questions. But as to the question of people were like, could he have done it after he was told he was out of the game? We already knew the answer was no, because we've seen and heard it before. Yeah. So I sometimes think people they forget these things after a season, and or they didn't realize it. But no, once you're out of the game, you can't do that. And it was like when Matthew was taken out for his shoulder injury a couple seasons ago. Just to be sure, though, Jeff Probst emphasized to Dalton Ross and on his own podcast that the rules are clear. If you're going to give something to someone, you have to do it before you are officially told you're pulled from the game.
Oh,
and
so why didn't Randen do it?
Well, so Jeff even said this means he could have literally interrupted Dr. Will and said, wait, before you pull me, and then done it. But of course.
Or if he had even a slight inclination, he could have been like, look, hold on to it for a little while, just in case.
He said he discussed his thought process in interviews, and he did want to give it to Venus. The problem was he didn't want to make it obvious. And it was in his jacket. And there was some series of events. He described it very vaguely, which makes me think like you do, that there was either like production was like, hey, Jeff is coming, or hey, he didn't want to get obvious and like get up, walk over to his jacket, rummage through the pockets, and so he said he wasn't able to do it and get it secretly before he was pulled. So it left the game with him.
Sad.
I feel like he could have been creative, though. Sitting there, he could have said, hey, Venus, I know what you're wearing on the island, and it's not
Do you want
much,
my jacket?
So I'm going to leave my jacket, and you can have my jacket. Because his jacket...
She would know.
But she would know. But I think the rules on giving something to someone is you have to specifically say, I am giving you this advantage.
And you can have what's in my pockets.
Yeah.
I understand the limitations and the necessity for having a rule like this. Like, at what point are you no longer allowed to pass something off to someone? That makes complete sense. But in this particular circumstance, it's like you put him in a situation where you've limited his ability to do that, because he even said, he goes, I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what I was allowed to do in that moment. And so here he's got Jeff talking to him. He's got the doctor, and they're explaining all of these things to him. And in that moment, are we really supposed to think that he's going to go, oh, wait, hold up. I have this beware advantage and I want to give it to Venus. So can we just put a pause on this so I can take care of that? when you're being told you might have to have surgery because this might be like a huge medical emergency that is incredibly serious. You might have to get on a helicopter and get, I mean, like, are you really going to be like, oh, wait, no. I'm less concerned about that and more concerned about the advantage in my pocket. Like, I just feel like there could have been a different way to do that. And because in that moment, you're not thinking about the beware advantage in your pocket. You're not.
I mean, apparently he was thinking a little bit, but not enough, because he talked about how, this was the first time that someone would have ever wanted to give away a beware advantage that hadn't turned into an idol yet. And and there are questions about that. There are legitimate questions. What does that mean? If he hands it over to her, she accepts it? Does that mean she loses her vote immediately and therefore takes on everything that's in there? Again, this comes back to something, Jessica, you and I have discussed, and now with another lawyer on, I'm sure you'll agree. It is important to write rules that are clear, and
absolutely
think things through. And I think production did not think this through, as they have, as we have said before. And so when he brought this up, they were like, oh, crap,
err on the side of caution.
Yeah.
This whole situation is entirely 100% production driven, right? If production wanted him to pass on that beware advantage, he would have been able to,
and they would have told him.
Yes. I mean, the whole thing is production driven, and I think it benefits production for him to do that because it's good TV.
Right.
But the only thing I can think of is what you just said, David, is that they didn't have a caveat, because the beware advantage is an option. It's not a real advantage. It's an option whether to take it and take the loss of your vote. And they didn't really think everything through. Is instead of digging it up and making that choice, if you're then given by somebody else, when is that
you
choice
get
happen?
to say, no, I don't want this, thank you.
You would all,
Why would production choose not to have that happen? That's such cool TV for him to slip it to her. Like, they could easily listen. I've seen production create a lot of other more difficult scenarios than passing on an advantage. Okay, I've seen it. So we know it's possible, but you're right. There's no real clear defined rule.
I mean, it could be an interesting way to screw someone over if it allows it without, like, hey, Jessica, I'm going to I have this advantage I want to give you. Okay. And then you look at it and you've lost your vote. And it's like, what?
But then suddenly you're out of the game, but you're making this game move. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do agree that production could have taken steps to try to ensure that would have happened.
They're just not used to thinking it through. We've talked about that before. They don't realize there are loopholes. Everything you write, there will be loopholes.
The beware advantage is certainly a trickier one. Oh,
yeah.
So again, production, hire me. I will think these things through for you. I will write
all the loopholes, all of them.
Yes. All right. Well, we could move to Appendix A very briefly, because it is about the players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. And there was no tribe voting here. So there really isn't anything to talk about. So like I said, very quickly through there. So with that, it is about time to wrap things up. Karishma, what are your final thoughts on Randen?
Randen, if you're listening, I'm going to talk right to you. You were a joy to watch. I had high hopes for you. Great social awareness. I think you would have gone really far in the game. Really, really, really sorry. But you know what? I truly and honestly do believe everything happens for a reason. Everything in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, happens for a reason. And this was your path, however short it was. And at the end of the day, you can at the very least hang your head on, it was out of your control.
Yeah.
Well, we know it happened for a reason. It happened so Bhanu could stay in the game. That was Bhanu's
that was the reason.
Look, you gave somebody else. It's like an organ donor.
Yeah.
You gave somebody else life. Randen the organ donor. Oh man.
Oh no.
It's so sad. You gave him his heart. You gave him a heart.
Yes.
He's after 1 million of them, so he's well on his way.
Yeah. He only needs 999,999 more.
Gosh, we are terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, Randen. I do feel for Randen in so many ways because it has to be incredibly heartbreaking to have your dream taken away from you in such a fashion. I know his family was looking forward to throwing him the first boot party. So you didn't have a first boot party. I hope they threw you a medevac party when you got home. At least you got that out of it. But I agree with Karishma. I do really think that you would have done very well in this game. You seem to have such an even centeredness about you and being very socially aware of your surroundings, knowing who was close to whom and knowing who you needed to kind of take under your wing so you could continue to move further in the game. I liked the quiet confidence that he had in the game. Some people might equate that to being a little more of a boring player. I appreciate that type of player because they seem to be much more aware of what's happening around them. And unfortunately for Randen, he suffered something that was completely out of his control. Damn you, Bamboo, for taking Randen out of the game. It's very, very frustrating. I don't like the Bamboo, but Randen, I hope everything has worked out for you in the end, and I do hope you got that party from your family.
Yeah, it really sucked for Randen that this happened to him, and he had to get pulled from Survivor. I'm glad it turned out to be treatable and he was well taken care of, but I still felt bad for him. It's not like he was injured while climbing a rock for fun or something. Nothing against Matthew, but hey. It's just one of those things that happened.
Didn't cooperate, yeah.
Yeah. It would be great if Survivor does what they did for Bruce and brings him back out again. Though the call for doing that doesn't seem as great since Randen at least got to play a few days. And I don't think Jeff wants to set a precedent such that people expect it.
Yeah.
Still, we can hope because I do think Randen had some game in him and it would have been fun to see. Randen had really just started playing in his strategic maneuvering and had plans for the future. But because his tribe did so well, we never got to see those come to fruition. Being a pain in the neck has caused others to get voted out. But I don't think having a pain in the neck has ever been the issue until now. And that is why Randen lost.
Karishma, he has to. He has to.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
Man.
Well,
David, you rock.
Thanks.
That rock.
Yeah. That's right.
Before we get to our predictions for next episode, I do want to quickly remind everyone that the rules we discussed are available in poster form and poster on a t-shirt form and checklist on a t-shirt form. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/YXLost feed. And normally we have that on the bottom there, but it doesn't line up well with 3 people. So, so with that, Karishma, where can people find you? Again, we still have predictions coming. Don't turn off the podcast, people, but we just want to, check in.
I'm easy to find. I'm QT Karishma, the letter Q, the letter T Karishma on Instagram and X. I post my child and my adventures with my child mostly. But he is a goober and he is an ultimate sweetheart, but that's how you can find me. Every now and then I'll post some of my unpopular Survivor opinions and get a lot of troll hate, which is always fun. But yeah, that's where I am.
Nice.
Or Houston, Texas.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I know you're in Texas. So I am not in Texas, but Texas, listen, my sister lived in Texas for a time, and she described it as you run from your air-conditioned car to your air-conditioned apartment to your air-conditioned whatever is next, because it's so hot in the summer. So I've never had a chance to experience it. I've been to Colorado, but I've never been to Texas. I would love to go at some point. But
and it's the funniest phenomenon, because when you park your car, you get out of your car and you walk somewhere through the parking lot, you're immediately starting to sweat, and you walk in and everywhere is blasting their ACs. I'm telling you, like creating the tundra, like blast cold. So imagine you're walking in somewhere and it's blast of chill frozen air, but you have sweat. So that sweat is turning into like ice on your body.
Oh my God.
So that's actually what happens. So you're actually shivering inside of a
Not a good transition. It doesn't sound like it's too much fun.
Yeah,
But at some point, I'd love to go to Texas.
Great
so I
food town.
am
Great
at
food
Jessica
town.
Lewis 89 on Twitter, and I'm at Jessica Lewis 6789 on Instagram. I'm on Twitter more so than I am on Instagram. I just end up reposting a lot of what David posts on his Instagram story. So thanks for doing that, David. Because David Bloomberg is a guru. He is a social media guru.
I should be Bhanu's guru.
He is.
No,
and
no,
all of the above.
I don't think you will be able to surpass Jeff Probst in Bhanu's eyes, especially after podcast today. So you'll just have to stick with being the social media guru. And why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, David? It's everywhere.
So, yes, there are a few ways to find me. You can find all of my various accounts through my Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in Linktree in the URL. Or you could find me on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, and on the video platforms TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. And because Threads is connected to Instagram, I'm at David Bloomberg TV there as well. They had to ruin it. On TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, I've been posting 3 or sometimes even 4 videos per day. Right now, of course, I'm posting clips from U.S. Survivor. As I said earlier, this week, mostly Bhanu clips. But also from other shows like Deal or No Deal Island. And I just finished posting videos from the Traitors finale and reunion, so you should catch up on those. I'm also doing mini Why Blank Lost videos and other clips from Australian Survivor. Indeed, a few days ago, I posted a video of an incredible challenge performance from Australian Survivor. And it is approaching quadrupling my previous best with close to 4 million views on TikTok and another 5.6 million on Instagram as of now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I told you. Look at you, David.
So,
just taking off.
I mean, the strategic ones still get a few hundred or a few thousand, but someone doing a great performance in a challenge, that attracts attention, I guess.
Cool.
So what are you going to do?
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the Traitors finale and reunion, the podcasts that I recorded last week in my 3 podcasts in one day, those are available now on the Tradar podcast. It's spelled TRAIDAR, and you can find it wherever you normally find your podcasts or as audio on YouTube. Plus, we are going to do a season wrap-up and Q&A that will be posted soon. Speaking of finales, Australian Survivor Titans versus Rebels is coming to an end Tuesday, and I will be joining Sarah Carradine to discuss the final week and season overall on Silent Podcasts. I'll be talking to her Wednesday. I'm not sure exactly when that will come out. So lots of finale and reunion, or mostly finale discussions taking place. But we are not anywhere near a finale. So we have predictions. Yes. Okay. Now, earlier, I had mentioned that I was a little worried because we talked so much about Bhanu, and I feel like he might be going soon. And indeed, I do. If there is no swap, I do expect him to go this week. I almost decided to cut out part of the discussion for that reason, but I decided to live on the edge. I mentioned earlier that I don't think they were actually going to vote Kenzie out, and I still don't think they will, especially because the preview suggests Bhanu is going to confess to at least some of what he said to Liz and Ben, which of course he will because he's Bhanu and he can't keep a secret to save his life. So I just think he's going.
I think Yanu throws it to get rid of him.
But Q still wants to keep him.
You're right. But do you think? I don't know. We'll see.
I feel like there's going to be a swap.
I hope not. But there has to be. I think it's
going to be a swap, and I think it's going to be a swap because I agree. So I don't know if it was Karishma that said it or not, but they spent way too much time on Bhanu this week.
Yeah.
To then see him just go home next week. Like there needs to be some
Something.
reason for why we saw all of this. And my reasoning that I think is what's going to happen is when they do the swap, what else did Bhanu do in his vomiting that he was doing? He threw Kenzie under the bus, like as far as he could under the
That's
bus,
gonna be
right?
big,
And so then what did we also see? We saw it was Liz and Ben go back to their tribes and tell them Kenzie's running the show. Like it's all Kenzie. And he threw her so far under the bus, they reported the same. So I feel like there's going to be a swap. And I feel like Kenzie's going to be in a really, really tough spot because of what Bhanu said. And I want to believe that there was some reason why they spent so much time on this storyline. There has to be some meaning there. And so I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say there is going to be a swap and we're going to see Kenzie go home.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So I have thoughts on the swap, but I do want to say, something we saw on the preview at NAMI was that Tevin was apparently, or will be apparently, upset at Soda and wants to target her, which I think could stem from some of the work Randen talked about putting in to shift things and make her sound like a threat to him. But I think that's meaningless because I don't think they're going to tribal council. So, I did want to mention it was in the preview, but I don't think it has any true meaning.
Right.
As far as the swap, so there could be one. Last season, Jeff claimed that they always planned to swap at the point they did, which would be this episode. But I suspected it was actually he left some words out. Like, we always planned to swap at this time if a tribe was down to 3, which it was.
It's if. There's always an if.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to let that happen. I think they're seeing what we're seeing, and it's like
it's getting boring.
Yeah.
I mean,
we got to do something.
If he was telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, then yes, this would be the time to swap if they were doing it like last season. I could see everything that happened in the preview taking place before they're called to a challenge that turns out to be a swap.
Sure.
So all that stuff in the preview happens, and then they get called, and there's a swap. And at that point, we have no idea who might end up where.
Right.
Maybe Bhanu will land with people who can not lose a challenge, or who might want to keep him in favor of targeting someone else. And I think that's his only hope. But I think Karishma, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think you're absolutely right, Karishma, that I do think if there's a swap, Kenzie is in serious, serious trouble. Because there is literally no way she could end up with a majority.
No, there's not enough people left for her. Yeah.
Right, because
even already let her go. Yeah.
The only person in the whole game who wants to keep her is Tiffany.
Right.
And if Tiffany and Kenzie end up on the same tribe together, and the other, the rest of the tribe is more majority, I think Tiffany's going to be at that point like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
She's going to be able to read the way things are going.
She's very cerebral.
Yeah.
She really is.
And so I know I said Bhanu, so I'll just I'll stay by it because I don't want to switch.
Do you see what happened there?
Midstream.
I don't know. I might have swayed him a bit.
Well, I think Karishma.
Thanks for your help on that, Karishma. Thank you.
Tag team, rockstar lawyers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So my official prediction will be Bhanu, but I will not be surprised if it's Kenzie after what you guys said. So, I mean, other podcasters have been saying, well, it doesn't look like there's going to be a swap, but they don't always advertise that there's going to be a swap.
Never know.
In the preview, sometimes
they want to try to keep us guessing, right?
Yeah, sometimes it comes out in the later commercials or not at all. So we'll see.
Or Nami loses and Tevin wins over Soda.
I don't know. I don't see that happening, but so all right. Well, with that, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhaswebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons, plus the Facebook group, the Discord, and so and plus you help support everything on the network. So again, that's robhaswebsite.com/patron. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all of the reality TV RHAP Up podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP Up's feed. and selecting your podcast service of choice. You'll obviously find us there, but you found us already. So you'll also find the B&B, Survivor International, podcasts on a number of different other shows like Big Brother Canada, and just a whole bunch of other, whatever else is going on, it's on the RHAP Up. So make sure you subscribe there. And
Can I
that's
say
it.
thank yous?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you to everyone at RHAP for all of the incredible work that you do, creating the content that you put out. There are so many things available for people to listen to, so many various programs aside from just Why Blank Lost, although we really appreciate everyone who listens to us here. Thank you to Scott St. Pierre for the editing that you do, not only on the Why Blank Lost podcast, but all of the content that you just heard David describing. So thank you for that. And thank you to our listeners. As always, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate the feedback. We know that sometimes we say things that might get a people, a little riled up, but that's what we have to do. We have to talk through everything. So we do appreciate the feedback as well. So thank you very much for that. And Karishma, we truly appreciate having you join us. You were such a joy, and I love having a little bit of a tag team here that we can go after Bloomberg just a little bit. So that's great. So thank you very much. So great seeing you as always. You always bring such incredible insight. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about the game that we know and love so much. I never, ever lose hope on Survivor. So despite this first 3 episodes being a little slow for me, I have hope. And so let's go.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yes, thank you also, Karishma, and we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Jessica, for another great episode. We will see everyone in a week, and of course, you can find me everywhere until then if you want to give me any feedback at all. We will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.